Hi, guys, and welcome to the Android and Me podcast. This is episode number 12 for the week of February 16th. And we're back for another week. We have Brooks, Dima, and Nick with us tonight. How you guys doing?
Not bad.
Good. I'm doing awesome.
And this is actually the first time that Brooks is joining us. Nick and Dima have been on the podcast multiple times. Dustin's actually sitting out tonight because we have a full house. He decided to take the night off. I don't know what he's doing, studying, or just enjoying watching the Olympics. But as we've done with previous episodes and kind of introducing you guys to our staff, since it's Brooks' first time here, we thought we'd pick on him and get to know him a little bit better. So, Brooks, how long have you been blogging about Android?
Let's see. I want to say about a year and a half. I started blogging with DroidDog to the summer of 2012. So it'll be going on 2 years this summer.
Awesome. And I'm sure everyone's wondering, what device are you carrying with you as your daily driver?
Let's see. I'm running the Nexus 5 right now. I don't know if you can see it. And oh, that's my email. But anyway, Nexus 5. I'm running just stock Android, but I'm running Action Launcher as a custom launcher. I like to theme my Nexus 5 a lot, and I am using like Exposed framework. It is rooted. I do like to play around with it a little bit, but no custom ROMs right now.
No custom ROMs. And maybe the last question, I think we've got you listed as Dr. Brooks, and you've recently become officially a doctor. How does that make you feel compared to those of us who might be still in school or graduated with a regular degree from college?
I feel better than all of you.
That's what we thought.
Gosh, you elitist pig.
No, I mean it's exciting to have have a PhD, but you know I don't really flaunt it too much. I like to play around a little bit, but most people probably wouldn't even know I have one, especially the way I dress. I never even thought I'd have one myself. It's kind of odd, but it's kind of fun when people call me doctor. So I'm gonna milk it tonight. All right.
How many years of schooling did it take?
I 4.5 years of grad school. I just went straight onto a PhD. I didn't do a master's, and I don't know. I think probably about 4.5 years of undergrad too. I have an undergrad in mechanical engineering and a PhD in material science and engineering.
So you going back for another degree, or are you staying out? Staying out of school for now.
I think I've done enough.
You've
think I've
spent
done
enough money and time and half your life, or your entire life.
We'll see. We'll see. I like what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump into the news, and I'm just sitting here looking at our lineup, and it's covered with Samsung and HTC news, and it honestly looks pretty much like the same it did last week. We've got HTC M8 rumors, we've got Samsung Galaxy S5 rumors, we have Android update stories. I don't know, there's a lot that might seem exciting and a lot that might just seem boring, so I'm going to let one of you pick one of the first stories and jump in from there.
Nokia X.
You want to do the Nokia X?
I do.
So, take it away.
The Nokia X is the new name for the Nokia Normandy, which was rumored to be, to exist a long time ago. It's a Nokia phone running Android OS instead of the standard Windows phone. And at first we thought it was a byproduct of their work before Microsoft took over, but later we found out they're still making it, and it's actually going to be released. Now, a lot of us at Android and Me have always wanted a Nokia phone with Android OS because the Lumia line is amazing and well built. But unfortunately, we find out that the Nokia X has a dual-core 1 GHz Snapdragon processor, 512 megabytes of RAM, 1 gigabyte of built-in memory, with an SD card slot and a WVGA display. So it's an utter disappointment. It'll be running a full skin that looks exactly like Windows Phone on top of Android OS, and it's not something any of us would really get for everyday use. it's more of a low-end budget device, which is strange because Windows Phone runs better on budget devices than Android does. So I'm really not sure what to think. What do you guys think?
I think if it's like $120, I would totally get one. Just as like a backup phone, and just to have it because it looks nice.
So a
Yeah.
price point would make you take that over a Moto G.
Yeah, probably. Just because the Moto G is kind of ugly in comparison.
Yeah, I think, I think Dima said it right off the bat. We've always wanted a Nokia phone running Android, and Nokia got in bed with Microsoft a few years back, signing that contract. Microsoft essentially paid them to make Windows Phone devices and kind of reduced the licensing fees for them. And I don't know, Nokia's had pretty good success with Windows Phone. I mean, I think now they have 6 to 8% of the market, which isn't huge, but it's a lot bigger than what some of the major Android players even have these days. So I don't know, but the prospect of a Nokia phone running on Android seems to excite me, even though the phone itself doesn't. I don't know. It just gets me giddy that maybe Microsoft is, looking to try something different, even though this was kicked off by Nokia before the Microsoft acquisition.
One of our lovely commenters mentioned that maybe if Nokia is successful with this device, they might start releasing higher-end Android devices to fill in the rest of the market that don't compete with their Windows Phone devices, maybe in some markets where Windows Phone is a little more ignored. So if this thing is successful, if like each of us buys like 20 of them, maybe they might make a nice high-end Lumia device with their brilliant cameras, brilliant plastic construction, which I do love, and great screens.
Well, you get to a good point there. I mean, Nokia has some incredible software. Their camera software on their new Lumia devices is freaking
Unparalleled.
gorgeous. I mean, you have access to all the settings. You can break things down, and there's some DSLRs that could learn quite a bit from these, the interface, especially on these cameras. But Nokia has some really good location software that could technically almost compete with like Google Maps or something like that. I mean, if they're porting over their software over to Android, I mean, what's to stop anybody from pulling the APK and installing, a Nokia service app on, a regular Android device?
It's exciting. The whole thing is really exciting, even if it's not the phone for us techies.
So what would it take for you to buy a Nokia phone that you would think is competitive? I mean, as from what it looks like right now, I mean, this is going to be bargain basement, cheapo device that, yeah, it's exciting because it's Nokia, but the device itself is not exciting. At what point would you say I would buy this Nokia phone if it had X, Y, and Z?
A 720p display and one of their really nice cameras from their high-end Lumia devices, like that. I think it was the Lumia 1020 with that awesome camera. If it had that camera and a nice display, not amazing, just 720p display from the Moto X, I'd buy it for sure. Doesn't have to be high spec.
Do we know anything about the camera on it right now?
I think 5 megapixel.
Yeah, it's probably going to be disappointing.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, 5 megapixel. When we think 5 megapixel, we think Android phones with 5 megapixels. But Nokia, even on their crappy phones, the cameras are halfway decent. I mean,
Yeah.
Motorola's proven time and time again that they don't know how to make a phone with a decent camera.
I have to say the Moto X has a pretty dang nice camera. Once you get really used to it, it takes some really nice shots, even in low light.
It's kind of hit and miss, though.
It's hit and miss. Like, you have to, like, every time you take a shot, you have to take 2 or 3 to get the right picture.
That's
I mean,
true.
I've played with it. I mean, most people want just pull your camera out, take one picture, it's good to go. I mean, they want the iPhone experience, let's be honest. The
Yeah.
iPhone, you pull it out, you take a picture, it's good to go, you share it, you're done. I mean, anybody can take a good picture if you try 4 or 5 times. It doesn't matter what camera you have. You can, I positioned it this way, the light was too much, let's move it over here, you can tweak it to your heart's content, and you can find good pictures in anything. I mean, just imagine what the first cameras were. I mean, you had to stand still for 5 minutes in order for the frame to work and everything like that. I mean, they made those work, and those pictures turn out pretty good. So, I don't know. I'm excited for it. Do we have a launch date for this Nokia device yet, or are we simply expecting something at Mobile World Congress?
I think they teased it for Mobile World Congress today, but no launch date.
I don't know. Like with the way Nokia's been treating their budget-friendly devices, we haven't seen a lot of them actually hit Europe or the U.S. for that matter. I mean, the U.S. has been focused mainly on their really high-end Android or Windows Phone devices. We've seen some mid-range Windows Phone devices in Europe, but their really low-end ones have been for developing markets. Do we see this coming to a U.S. carrier as well?
Doubtful. Nobody would want a Nokia Android device on the carrier.
I mean, we're seeing budget phones for prepaid services. I mean, that's becoming, I think, a bigger deal, especially with how new phone plans with, AT&T has a non-subsidized phone plan now. T-Mobile. There's lots of different reasons why manufacturers would be wanting to bring out low-end phones, cheaper phones.
Well, and we got to remember too. I mean, there's the Boost Mobiles, there's the Virgin Mobiles, things like that, where we have these MVNOs as well that are just, a dime a dozen these days. They sell phones off contract. I'm not going to say that someone is going to pick it up, but I could definitely see one of those types of carriers offering this device at a really discounted price.
I think they'd want it, but I'm not sure Nokia would even bother releasing it in the U.S.
Yeah, I feel like you're either going to have to buy it off contract straight from Nokia if you want it in the U.S., because it's most likely going to be for developing countries.
So we didn't cover this, but last week there was news that Microsoft was going to start supporting Android applications through emulation on Windows Phone. It wasn't confirmed. It's not an official story, but there's rumors and speculation that they're looking for this to encourage, well, not encourage, but get more applications onto the platform, similar to what BlackBerry did with BlackBerry 10. And then, there's, the story about the Nokia X was, around back then too, last week. But is there a tie-in here? Or, is Microsoft making a play to, carve out their own niche within the Android ecosystem?
Could this be the like Microsoft's version of the Nexus, trying to bring developers from Android, try and develop, for the Windows mobile platform?
I don't know. I think they need something more high-end than what the Nokia X is going to be.
I disagree, considering that if they were running KitKat, which is extremely unlikely, I think even on a dual-core Snapdragon it would run pretty dang nicely. So people could legitimately develop apps for it, especially since Windows Phone would run on the same hardware pretty well. So I think that would be a pretty good Nexus-like device, as Brooks said. Dr. Brooks.
Dr. Brooks. And yes. I kind of proposed the same idea. I was actually, the guys from Pocket Now had me on their podcast last Thursday, and we kind of talked about it, and they didn't like the idea. They thought the idea of Microsoft pulling in Android onto the Windows Phone platform and even this Nokia device was kind of, it definitely is unintuitive, but it would be to the detriment of the Windows Phone platform.
I think so,
but I kind of stress the point that if Microsoft is creating a Nokia device running Android, they're going to have their own app store. They're going to have an Android app store. And if they can find a way to curate Android apps into their Android app store and then use those curated apps and port them seamlessly to Windows Phone, it's a win-win because they would make money off the sales of those apps, just like they would make the money off the sales of Windows Phone apps. Amazon kind of does the same thing. They have their own forked version of Android, but they have their own app store, and you don't necessarily have to customize the apps for Amazon's Kindle devices, but Amazon does have some guidelines as to, these are where the buttons are. You don't necessarily have to tweak the UI, but here's some recommendations. And we actually see a lot of devices or applications for the Kindle that look different than they do from their Google Play variants. So, I mean, they might have something like that in store, which would line them up perfectly for getting these apps onto Windows Phone. I mean, if you're a developer and you have, 5 developers and you're focusing your development powers on Android and iOS, but then you could get your app specifically on a Windows Phone device if you make a couple UI tweaks here and there. I don't see why I wouldn't want to do that. I already have the Android app available, and I just have to spend a couple hours tweaking it a bit.
It makes sense, but I don't think it would work like that. I don't think people would bite. Nobody really bothered with BlackBerry's version of it. I don't think people will actually go for it too much, honestly.
But the main difference is BlackBerry had 0 market share with the new operating system. Windows Phone already has around 10% market share. So it's completely different. You're talking maybe 50,000 devices on the market for BlackBerry versus 15 to 20 million that are currently on the market. So the markets are the scale of the markets is completely different when comparing those.
Well, from what I've read, the developer's point of view, they only, for example, when Android was about tied with iOS, they would only focus on iOS because it's where all their energy was. And even when Android was rising up, they wouldn't focus on it because it would just take too much energy. What I was trying to say is that I don't think people would bite for Windows Phone or Nokia's App Store even if they have 10% market share, because it's just not enough to bother for many, many developers. I don't think it would work out on a wide scale.
Any last thoughts from anyone else on the Nokia X?
I was just thinking that, I mean, I've never actually used a Windows Phone for an extensive period of time. I've just only played with them. But from what I understand, I feel like probably their biggest hardship is apps. I mean, am I off base?
Yeah, that and lack of notification center and a couple other key features like that. I mean, Android's like this very mature operating system, and Windows Phone currently feels like Android 1.5 or 1.6.
Except pretty.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah, but I mean, like there's some key things that are keeping me away. For me, if they had a full notification center, I wouldn't care about the apps. I would be using it. I just can't stand not having somewhere to go to get all my notifications. Having to jump in and out of every single app to find everything is just so 2005.
I think I'd agree with Brooks because most consumers only go for apps. If there's no Instagram on Android, they're not going to buy an Android phone. They're going to buy an iPhone. And really, there's no. Oh, there is now Instagram on Nokia devices, but I don't know how good it is. I think I agree with Brooks. The biggest problem is apps to consumers. Anyway.
I was just thinking that if I could see Microsoft trying to throw their weight at apps in any way possible. Maybe they'll come up with some. If this is really what they want to do and try and entice developers or encourage app development, porting from Android or whatever. I mean, I could see them throwing some sort of enticements towards developers, and maybe this is just kind of a stepping stone.
Well, don't they already pay some developers to develop for Windows Phone?
Yeah, they have a development program where if you develop an application and it gets so many downloads within a certain time frame, they pay you. But I mean, it's like $10,000. And so for an indie developer, that's fine. I mean, you spend a month and a half on an app and port it over, and you make your money back, essentially. But for a large company, $10,000 is a drop in the bucket. I mean, you go to Instagram and you tell them, hey, we're going to pay you $10,000 to develop your app. You're like, we pay our developers $10,000 a day because that's how many developers we have. That's nothing to us. I mean, just to put it in perspective, I mean, 10,000 is a lot to some people and absolutely nothing to the apps that actually matter for the platform. So moving on from Nokia X, we have a ton, well, probably not a ton, but a handful of Galaxy S5 rumors leading us up to Mobile World Congress, where the device is probably going to be unveiled. Dima, I know you're deeply involved with all these rumored stories. Give us the best parts and the worst parts.
Well, one of the best parts is the fingerprint scanner was confirmed, quote unquote confirmed by a source. And though it's taking that Samsung approach of stuffing as many features in as possible, it actually seems pretty cool. It's going to be in the home button, like Touch ID on Apple devices, but the similarity ends there because you have to swipe your finger, which is much more secure, allegedly, than just holding your finger on there. It recognizes up to 8 fingerprints, and you could make them shortcuts for apps or actions. It will show your fingerprint in real time on the display while you swipe, which is pretty cool. But really, fingerprint scanners are a little bit of a gimmick anyway. But that was confirmed. It was also confirmed that it would have a 16-megapixel camera, at least on some versions. There's rumors going around that there would be multiple versions of the S5. But 16 megapixels sounds pretty dang nice.
Has there been anything within all the rumors about optical image stabilization for the S5?
No, and that's probably the biggest downfall of the camera.
I think I don't know what Samsung's trying to prove. I mean, yes, the Galaxy S4 has taken great pictures, but everyone's proven that optical image stabilization is the way to go.
To be fair, LG's OIS is not enough to redeem their cameras, but I agree completely that they need optical image stabilization in their cameras.
Yeah. I don't know. And for the unveiling event, rumor has it that Samsung is going to be stepping back and not putting on the massive show that it has, or at least that it did last year. I mean, we had a Broadway show in that had thousands of people and press and a huge production, tap dancers, ballet production, the whole everything, anything you can imagine, they had it. And the rumor is they're not going to be doing any of that, and it's going to be more of, hey, this is our new phone, these are the features, now go play with it. What's your take? Is that the good approach? Do you think that, kind of the launch of the Samsung Galaxy S4 last year was overshadowed by the show?
I think yes. I think when I think about who's actually watching those unveilings, it's us. It's the media. There's probably some nerds out there like us that are probably watching it, but I think most of the people are going to be hearing the news about the Galaxy S5 secondhand, and I think probably a lot of the posts about the Galaxy S4 were probably started off like, what the heck? Like, what did I just see? That was, I felt embarrassed watching that, rather than actually talking about how cool the Galaxy S4 was and the new features that, I mean, I think the idea was cool. They showed us all these different scenarios of how this Galaxy S4 could be used. The idea was cool, but it was just a little over the top, and maybe they didn't think about who the crowd was very well.
I think last year it was really entertaining, but like Brooks was saying, it was definitely over the top, and I think it would be better just to focus on the device this year rather than try to show off all these different ways you can use it that don't really make sense. Like, they had all these people like sipping wine and running around in weird locations, and it just distracted from what the phone was.
I think they should learn from last year, where that got people talking, but talking about all the wrong things. Like Brooks said, they talked about how terrible quote unquote the performances because I thought it was hilarious. It was cheesy in a sort of way that appealed to me, but nobody really talked about the device as much as they talked about the show and how much they loved it or hated it. So they should tone it down, but still get people talking in some interesting way. They shouldn't just make a boring press conference like HTC always does. No offense to HTC or Nick.
How dare you? No. But the one thing I love about Samsung is that they're not afraid to take a chance. They put on a Broadway musical. I mean, what other technology company has put on a Broadway musical? And what other Broadway company or technology company has put on a musical and everyone's still talking about it a year later? There's something to say about that, even though it was the wrong message to get across. We're still talking about it. And even though it didn't achieve what Samsung set out to achieve, they still got a huge press boost because of that. I mean, kind of the wrong one, but it's kind of that notion of there's no such thing as bad news or bad press. I mean, as long as someone's writing about you, they're writing about you and they're spreading your name. So we'll see. And
the Galaxy S5 is big enough that we're going to be writing about it regardless, though.
Yeah, for all the...
We're not going to be skipping over that story.
Actually, we should. We should do that. It's like a social experiment. Just skip over the Galaxy S5.
We'll skip it this year.
We'll take it out of your paycheck.
We should try that. We will not post any more stories on Android and Me about the Samsung Galaxy S5. None. We're done.
Well, I'm out of business. Goodbye.
We'll skip to the Samsung Galaxy S6 for next year. We'll start posting those rumors starting tomorrow.
We're also changing our name to HTC and Me.
Yeah, HTC and Me.
Well, you'd love that, wouldn't you?
Anything but Samsung and Me. So, with Brooks's awesome transition to HTC and Me, that brings us to a handful of HTC stories. One of which actually broke today. HTC launched a new, essentially an enhancement to their warranty policy here in the United States called HTC Advantage. They actually tied it in with their Reddit AMA from last week, where they announced that they were going to be giving their flagship devices a full 2 years, 24 months of Android software support. We're not exactly sure what that means at this point. They said only their flagship devices would be getting that. But the HTC Advantage details that were released today essentially said if you buy a new HTC One phone, that means the One Max, or the One Mini, starting today, customers will get 6 months of worry-free anything. You can drop your phone, and if the screen cracks, they will replace it one time for free within the first 6 months. They're tying in, as I said, the software updates into this HTC Advantage program. They're also talking about the 25 to 50 gigabytes of online storage through Google Drive that you get when you buy one of these phones as well. And they're hoping to use this as a promotional tool in store for sales reps to use. When you're comparing devices, hopefully, someone in the T-Mobile or AT&T store says, well, actually, if you buy this phone, you can crack your screen within the first 6 months, and they'll replace it for you. So, any thoughts on that? I mean, HTC was teasing this for a couple days. They started on Valentine's Day with a couple subtle tweets about, posting pictures with broken screens, stuff like that. Have any of you broken the screen on your device before?
Nope.
One time my Galaxy S2 dropped onto a carpet, and the display, the glass didn't crack, but the what's behind it? The LCD just kind of like went black. It was kind of crazy. But fell out of my pocket when I was sitting in a chair on a carpet, like 2 feet. But I was with Sprint at the time, and I had like I don't know what it's called. Got it repaired for free.
Yeah, Sprint has a really good support package that they sell with their devices, which is nice.
Yeah.
I've personally never broken a screen. I've never broken a phone, ever. I've never sent in a phone for repair, and everyone's always like, "You should have a case on that phone. It's gonna break." I'm like, no. Not gonna happen. Been doing this for years, over a decade. But do you think this is something that consumers will gravitate towards? I mean, if you go into a store and someone tells you that you get, 6 months of worry-free coverage essentially on a new device, um, especially those who buy 2 to 3 cases for their phones when they buy them because they know that they drop their devices all the time. Is this something that's going to say, yeah, I'm going to get this phone instead of that one because this other phone doesn't have this coverage?
I'd say yes, but only if consumers knew about it. I think HTC has to advertise it heavily themselves, because the day I walk into an AT&T store and the rep says, this phone will be repaired for free and you don't have to buy our warranty, is the day pigs fly. So I doubt any carrier would ever say anything like that except maybe T-Mobile, because if you're using one of their Next plans, the warranty is just included, so they wouldn't really care because they're not losing anything. But I highly doubt any in-store rep would ever mention something like that, because they would lose out on some big money.
Just to give you guys a heads up, my computer says it's going to restart in 4.5 minutes, and I can't do anything about it. So I believe I can hand over the Hangout to one of you guys so that I can restart my computer. So you guys continue on while I figure that out so that the whole thing doesn't go down.
I think this is a cool move by HTC. I mean, this potentially could save you hundreds of dollars, especially if you're someone who is drop prone, which I know there's several people out there are. I mean, first off, the HTC One is a beautiful device, and to have to put a case on it, heaven forbid a OtterBox. It's just kind of a shame, but just to have the option to be able to drop your phone is pretty nice. Not only, if you knew about it, and you potentially might not use insurance, which could save you, 7 to, 10. How much is insurance these days? It's kind of pricey, right?
I think it's $16 a month for some
16
carriers.
a month. Plus, if you have a high-end phone, it's going to cost you a $200 deductible at least if you are drop prone. Anyway, so potentially could save you a lot of money. It could be a good selling point. I think it's a cool move. It's an aggressive move by HTC to do something different. I mean, every little bit's gonna help for them.
I can definitely see people who would use this, because I know people who drop their phones several times a year and then they just go out and replace it, or they buy several cases like OtterBoxes. I know people who somehow manage to break those.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so for this, I can see it definitely being an advantage. It's a free screen replacement within the first 6 months, and people would be like, hey, I always break my phone within a month of having it. I'll get this.
I think it's a wonderful, wonderful idea and good on HTC, but again, they're going to have to heavily advertise it. And they recently acknowledged that they didn't focus on advertising, so they might actually learn from their mistakes this time around.
Well, they should have Robert Downey Jr. again with random things.
Breaking phones?
Robert Downey Jr. breaking phones with the Iron Man suit.
That's something I want to see.
He would be getting a refurbished one back, is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Robert Downey Jr. only gets refurbished ones back.
That's not just a replaced display. Did you get it figured out, Nick?
I'm still trying to find it.
It's going to go black.
I'm Googling it.
Google faster!
I'm trying. Keep talking. Talk amongst yourselves.
Also, you might want to. What I read is you might want to have a backup phone too, right? It's going to take like 8 to 10 days without a phone.
Well, you can get overnight shipping, and they'll ship you a replacement phone overnight for like $30.
Yeah, $29, and they'll have a phone for you the next day.
So then you're getting a refurbished phone, regardless.
Yeah.
Well, we should just buy a Nokia X for a backup phone, then not have to pay $29.
There you go. I mean, it's about the same price. Hopefully.
If the Nokia X is $29, I'll buy myself one for sure.
Yeah, I'll buy like 3 of those.
I'll buy 4.
They're probably going to be built like a tank, like all the old Nokia phones. We could like throw them at a wall, and it will be fine.
We could throw them at our HTC Ones and then get replacements.
Yes, and the Nokia will never need a replacement. It will last for years.
So what's next, Nick? Have we? Should we
I'm
move on?
still here. Yeah, you guys can move on to the next topic. I think you guys can cover the announcement that the March 25th is when the HTC M8 is going to be unveiled in New York and London, kind of like last year.
I mean, we talked about this last time, how the HTC One excites pretty much none of us. Brooks, you weren't on. What are your thoughts on the HTC M8? The fact that it's going to be the same look, the same basic shape, 5-inch display with giant bezels, probably the body of a Note series smartphone with a smaller display because they have that giant HTC logo on that black bar underneath without physical buttons. They're going to have on-screen buttons.
I wasn't a huge fan of the HTC One. I could have bought that. I could have gone with the S4, and I ended up. Well, actually, what I actually ended up doing was buying a Galaxy S4, selling it, and then buying a Nexus 4. But I don't know. I feel like Samsung did a better job of packaging everything that they did in their phone with the size. Although, I mean, the HTC One has some cool perks with boom sound. Obviously, the aluminum display. I would like to see. I'd probably agree with you guys. I would like to see an evolution rather than, I guess a sidestep or just a small upgrade. I'd like to see an evolution. I've seen some cool renders out there. But didn't Evleaks tweet today that it will have 2 cameras?
Yeah, it's
That's been
definitely going to
confirmed
have.
for a while. Oh, confirmed in the leak world. It's going to have 2 cameras of some sort, but I still think that that's more of a little step instead of a big step.
I hate apologizing.
I'll
And
apologize for you.
We are back on the air. Hello, Google and all the world. We have 0 viewers right now, so I can talk and say absolutely whatever I want. But for those tuning back in, we had some technical difficulties where my computer decided to restart, and I couldn't do anything about it. And since I was hosting the Hangout, we lost our live feed. So this is take 2, the second half of this week's Android and Me podcast. What were we talking about before all the disaster set in? Anyone remember?
We were talking about the M8.
Yeah, probably.
So we covered the launch date. We covered disappointment in the device because the hardware essentially looks the same. Earlier tonight, actually, we haven't actually posted on this on the site yet, but Evleaks sent out a tweet saying that the M8 will actually be called the all-new One.
Oh, that's like Apple with the new iPad.
Slow clap. I think we've kind of predicted this already, kind of saying HTC would probably just bring the name back. We've had some interesting discussions about this regarding what the market reaction will be, what general consumers' reaction will be. I'm of the opinion that it's halfway okay, simply because people are used to it with cars. Every year you go out, you get a new Honda Civic, you get the 2013, the 2014, you bought the 2012, I used to own the 2006. Consumers are okay with it with cars, so why wouldn't they be okay with it with phones?
Here's the difference. If they named it the HTC One, I think that's not just halfway fine, it's perfectly fine. But naming it the all-new one? They don't name it the all-new Civic, and then you have to go saying, I have a Honda the all-new Civic.
Well, I don't think they would necessarily be calling it the all-new Civic or the all-new One. That's how they would refer to it. It would be the HTC One, and the commercials would simply say the all-new HTC One or the all-new One, kind of like commercials for cars do. The 2014. I think it's simply going to be called HTC One. So there's the downside to it. From a consumer point of view, when you go to buy an accessory and you say, I need to buy an accessory or a case for the HTC One, you walk in, they're like, well, this one doesn't fit my phone, but this one's for the HTC One. It should fit. Well, no, it's not. And And I'm sure, Dima, you've run into this issue working on your car, and you say, you have what car? And you go to websites to try to find model parts and things like that, and they say they're for your car, but it's not necessarily for your car, is it? Have you run into issues with that, trying to
I run into
retrofit
issues
things?
finding things like that on eBay, but actually buying something and then it not fitting, I don't think so. But it's hard
Well,
to find the right part. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. For a general consumer who may not be completely educated and not knowing that there's 2, maybe next year there's 3 or 4 HTC Ones, I think in the long run it might get a little confusing. I don't know.
I think so too. Plus, with like cars, they change the look significantly every few years. So when they say the all-new Civic, you're looking at a whole different Civic, and there's no way to get them confused. With the HTC One looking exactly the same, I think a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, that's last year's model," when looking at the new one in a store.
We ran into this issue with the Nexus 7.
Yes.
And people, when you're looking for cases, manufacturers for cases were coming up with all sorts of different ways to try and describe the new 2013 Nexus 7, the FHD or the, and it was kind of like at first it was kind of sketchy. You didn't know which one you were gonna get.
Well, and
so that is an issue. But what I think HTC is trying to do here is brand, and that's what Samsung's done really well with the S line, with their Note line, with all the different lines, is you know what you're getting when you buy that, and until HTC does that, people aren't going to really know what to go to. It's going to be something different every year.
Well, and that's the thing. Like they can come up with those brands, and as you were saying with the Nexus 7, and trying to get the different accessories. We actually saw a leak for screen protectors for the HTC M8, and it actually said HTC One, and then in parentheses it said M8. So they might use the code name for the device and bring that along. We get that with a lot of different things that are actually named the same. I used to work at 3M, and we had products that every year we would turn out, and there would be the new one every year, but we would call it the same. But the code number for the device, which was always on the packaging somewhere, was different. Even though the product was named the same, there was a code number. The SKU number was actually different, and that was always on it. So it could be that they bring the SKU number and introduce that as the M8. Last year's was the M7. Next year's is the M9, and bring that along.
They do the same thing with cars, so it makes sense.
Yeah. One last thing that I'd like to say about it is, with cars, you always get the commercials. The Honda Accord, Car and Drivers, top 10 last 20 years or something like that. HTC won a lot of awards with the HTC One. They would be able to bring that in. I mean, the HTC One, winner of such and such magazine's Design Phone of the Year 6 years running or 2 years running, being able to pull that in because it is the same brand, you could pull in past awards for even your newer devices, something that you can't do if you change the device name every year.
They could pull it off if they try hard enough in advertising, but that's a bit of a risk considering they don't know advertising.
This is very true. This is very true.
Yeah, they're just advertising companies. They can hire in somebody.
Yeah. Well, and that takes us to the end of the news, and we actually have 2 stories at the end that are tie back to Dr. Brooks and the good articles that he shares with us. For those who don't know, Brooks doesn't actually do much of the news on Android and Me, but you focus more on some of your own. Are you calling it a customization series, or how are you pitching it?
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, I don't know. I get a lot of people ask me, like, when I post my home screens, what icons are those? What clock is that? And I think it's fun to share. I think it's fun to help people have awesome looking phones, because Android's so dang cool that we can customize it, make it look however we want. So
Brooks is the king of customization.
The king of customization. King Custom.
Or Dr. King Custom.
Doctor.
But
So
just trying to spread the Android love.
yeah, and as much as we all love news about um, the new devices, some of your posts from the last couple of weeks, the one talking about the different launchers for Android, the wallpapers, and even the new Musée live wallpaper post from last week. These types of posts, they seem to every week be at the top of the list of the most traffic posts on the site, and they actually drive a whole bunch of engagement. People are commenting, they're talking about their different home screens and how their setups are and what apps to use, what apps not to use, what custom icon packs. So I want to know, like I've been doing the Android customization thing for a long time. I think I shared a while back that the reason I rooted my T-Mobile G1 in the first place was because there was a developer a developer customization contest on XDA developers back in the day, and the only way to get custom icons, and they actually customized the graphics for the built-in stock launcher, was to root the device and essentially flash a new ROM with these graphics built in. And so that's what I did back in the day, and since then things have gotten a lot easier. You don't have to root your device anymore. But what got you started with the customization with Android, and how do you stay up and in the know? I mean, I used to do it a lot. Now I'm an old fogey, and I get my things how I want, and I leave it like that for 6 to 8 months before I change it.
How do I stay in the know? I follow a lot of themers and developers that are just are churning out new icon packs and cool customization apps. And one of my favorite places to stay up on what's happening in the theming and world, I guess, is Google Plus communities. There's there's Android wallpaper communities, themes, and then if you just join communities for like your favorite launcher, like Nova Launcher, Apex, Action Launcher, people are always posting their home screens on there. It's a great place to find what other people are doing and share and get some great ideas for your own device.
So if you could yeah, I mean, if you could customize or change one thing that's currently not customizable on Android, what would it be?
I wish,
because there's a lot that is, but there's a few that aren't.
I wish I could have the Google Experience Launcher. I wish that offered more customizability, customization. I really want to use the Google Experience Launcher. I like it. I think it's pretty slick. I can swipe to get Google Now, and then I can talk to it on the home screen. But currently, there's just not a lot of options. I'm too spoiled by Action Launcher to leave it. But I don't know. That's probably my quick answer for you. I can keep thinking about it.
No, and that actually ties into kind of what my answer would be. For me, it would be stock launchers from the OEMs that don't offer customization. I run the HTC One, and I have Sense loaded onto my device. I have Sense 5.5. But you post all these icon packs, and I can't use the icon packs because I'm running the Sense launcher, and Nova and all these other custom launchers. They all kind of have the same framework underlined that you can use these icon packs. But as you said, the Google Experience Launcher doesn't work with that. You can't use them with all these other, essentially they're all they're all custom launchers, but they're not using the same underlying framework. And I would love it if Google would come out with a standard and say, this is Android, this is how you customize a launcher, here's all the things that you can do. If other custom launchers want to come out and have additional features, that's fine, but essentially Google's setting the baseline for, this is how you customize the launcher, and every OEM kind of has to build that into their launcher, make it part of the requirements, kind of like how they made Holo a requirement going forward for new devices from OEMs, having that framework there, kind of having that same customization framework, and then give consumers options even with custom software from the OEMs.
Yeah.
Do you guys do any customization of your own on your devices?
I copy Brooks.
I just kind of do stuff with Action Launcher, and yeah, occasionally copy Brooks.
I'm flattered. Blushing.
Oh,
we
look at
should
that
have
blush.
we should have a contest on the site of who can be the Brooks cloner or predict what Brooks will do next. I think that might be an exciting series.
I'm open to new ideas too. If you guys and listeners, readers, whatever, if you guys have ideas of what you'd like me to write about next with the series, with the Make Your Android Device series, Make Your Android Device Yours series, let me know. Talk to me on Twitter, Brooks_Barnard, or post your home screens.
How much do you spend on your customization? Because I know the icon packs aren't cheap. How many icon packs have you paid for?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Would your wife be happy with you if she knew?
You know what? What I asked for like Christmas and like my birthday is like Google Play money just so I can buy this stuff, and Google Opinion rewards. I mean, that's helping me fund just by doing surveys. I don't know. Do you guys do that?
Yeah.
I'm pissed at that because every time it gives me an 8-question survey, I answer the question truthfully, the first one, and then it's just like, it's over. Here's 25 cents.
Yeah, I know.
You should lie. Just lie.
I'll lie.
But also, my wife gets way more surveys than I do. I think it's really wants more girls in on that action.
Well, you should lie and say you're a girl.
I don't know how to change my settings. But,
How do I change my sex?
You might have to shave the beard or something. I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I probably like 10 or 15. But there's free ones too if you look hard.
Yeah, the free ones they get boring after a while.
Yeah.
All of them.
I find myself browsing the the $2 ones, and there's a couple that are $3, and I'm like, oh man, do I really want to spend $3 on an icon pack that I'm going to use for a couple weeks, and then I'm going to kind of toss it to the side with a new one that comes out after that?
I felt like it was hard at first to spend the $2 for some reason. I was like such a cheapskate about it, but I don't know, now it's not as hard. And plus I enjoy supporting the themers and developers. I think it's good. I mean, it's what makes Android awesome, and if we're just being cheapskates about it, they're gonna go somewhere else. So
Yeah,
I
usually
support them.
Usually I spend my money on something that I know I'm going to use for a while. And as I said, I set my home screen and I leave it like that for quite a long time. And so I do a lot of shopping around, and then I'll spend my money and I'll tweak it and customize it for about a week and then set it for 6 months. So I'm just really picky about how I want it. And usually with the icon packs, I want an icon pack that's really complete. There's some that look really nice, but they only have icons for 60 or 70 apps, and then you look through your app drawer, and there's so much inconsistency with the apps, and I always want to make sure that I'm finding something that has at least the majority of the major apps that I use on a daily basis. And one of the apps which pisses me off that most icon themers don't have a custom icon for is the Plume Twitter app. It drives me crazy every time I load up a new custom icon pack, because that's my default Twitter app and I use it, and I'm like, stupid. It has, so that usually it like defaults back to the default icon app, and then they have like a shaded background behind it or something like that. I'm like, this is stupid. Why did I pay $3 for this?
Why not change it? If an app isn't supported, just switch it to the icon of another app. If, for example, Tweedle isn't supported, it's not
But
always
then they don't
supported
match. They
as
don't
well.
match.
Change it to the icon for the official Twitter app of that same icon pack, so it'll all look the same.
But I like my Plume. Like I I
Well-
like the fact that it's different from the Twitter app. As I
He
said,
doesn't want change.
I'm
Well,
really
I'm
picky.
sorry.
I'm really picky, guys. You don't understand.
No, we understand. First world problems.
First world problems. And I think that's it for our podcast. Does anyone else have any last closing thoughts with take 2 of the Android and Me podcast for this week?
Moto X is currently on sale, $70 off until February 22nd. And if you're a Verizon customer, you can get it for a penny on contract right now. So if you want one, go out and buy one. I recommend them. I think we
Wow.
all do.
That was like a memorized ad. You went so quickly with that.
I'm
Was
sorry.
that a paid sponsorship, Dima? How much is Moto
Absolutely.
paying?
They paid me in gum.
In Blueberry
It was-
Vape.
It was Lenovo. What'd they send you? What'd they have on you? That's the question now. Because now they're like owned by the Chinese government or something. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, but
Dun, dun,
yeah, I
dun.
just like this phone a lot. I recommend buying it. There's constantly deals on it, so there's not much of a better time to buy it than now.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all, especially Brooks, for joining us for the first time. It's been a real pleasure. Got to make sure you're on more than once every 5,000 episodes. We're only you're 1 for 12, so that's not too bad. I think.
Settling down for me a little bit.
Who else? There's a couple other people that haven't been on the show. We still need to get Alex on here and
Jess.
Steve and Jess. Jess has been on just the first night, wasn't she?
Yeah.
I think
Just
so.
for a little bit.
That's about it. So yeah, we need to mix things up, and as I said, we're working on guests as well. We've had a couple guests come onto the show, and I think those have gone really well. I'm hoping we can get Mr. Taylor himself, Taylor Wimberly, to be on the show. So
That's
I just gotta twist his arm. You know, he's hanging out at the NBA All-Star Game, doing stuff like that. He's too important for a lowly old podcast like us. So, and that's it. That is episode 12 of the Android and Me podcast for the week of February 16th. Before we head out, we'd like to remind you that you can follow us on Twitter at Android and Me. How about all of you sound off with your Twitter handles?
At Brooks_Barnard.
At Zrycon15. It's in the little banner thing because no one can spell it.
Yep, look in the banner at Halo Ruler 64.
And I am at Nick M. Gray, keeping it simple. And that'll do it. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you guys have a wonderful evening and a good week, and we'll be back next week.
Bye.
All right, have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.